kind of recap. So this is part 2 of the appraisal controversy here in racket number 1. If you like these kind of controversies, make sure you hit the subscribe button.
Say the word again.
Controversies. I'm not very smart. We'll get into that. People know that I'm not very smart. But we've got Warren Sumner joining us today from North Carolina. Warren was one of the gentlemen that commented on the video.
You were a true gentleman.
Yes, you are. And we'll get in. We'll cover that comment amongst some others. Warren, welcome to The Real Word. You are we've had less than 10 guests on this show.
I think we've had less than 5.
Yeah. No, we've had about 5. I was looking back.
Really?
Yeah. It's usually when there's some type of controversy.
Drama.
We haven't had drama like this since episode 1 when we went after the Stop Zillow guy. But anyways, Warren, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you guys for having me. And I stumbled across your channel a few weeks ago and watched a few of your episodes. And it's great that you're out there and promoting yourself on YouTube. And I'm all in full support of that. I'm an agent myself. I'm trying to build my brand and do the same things. But I had watched a few episodes before this controverscy. So
yeah.
So you were a follower.
I don't think he's a subscriber. Did you subscribe, Warren?
I'm not sure I'm savvy.
Not sure.
To do
That's
that.
okay.
No,
So Warren is an agent, but he's also an appraiser. Now, Warren has been an appraiser longer than he's been an agent. He's been an appraiser. We got to chat a little bit right before the show. Since 1998, he became an agent in 2013. I want to make something very clear. Nicole and I do not know Warren. This is the first time we're ever speaking, right, Warren?
That's right.
Yeah, and this is not going to be a 2-on-1 hit job. In fact, I invited other people into the show here today. Scap, the appraiser. Scap was in the.
Was so angry.
He's in the comment section. I invited Scap, and Scap said that he's been on hundreds of shows, and that he couldn't join this show because of that reason. So I guess he's hit his quota for shows. Too many shows for Scap. We would have loved to have had Scap, but he didn't want to commit. Warren, my hat is off to you before we even get into this, just for being willing to come on and have the discussion. So for people that didn't see episode 177, let's just recap. We were talking about in racket number 1, which our show, for anyone that's really new to The Real Word, because now we've got some new people tuning in because of this topic. The Real Word is 2 rackets. They're segments. We call them.
Do you know what's going on?
I do know what's going on.
Okay.
They're rackets. We call them rackets, but they're segments. It's a 3-segment show. 2 rackets and then a marketeer of the week. So there's 3 sections. In the first racket of last week's show, we covered a Housing Wire article. Bobby, I'd like for you in the edit here to put up the Housing Wire article, and the name of that article is The Appraisal Process Colorblind. Within that article, Bobby, if you can even highlight where it shows, they are referencing a Washington Post article and a New York Times article, as well as various local news outlets. And these are sharing real-life events that are basically highlighting what they're saying, right? We're just reporting what they're saying, a potential, racial bias in some of these particular appraisals. Okay, so we spent 12 minutes on this segment. About 8 minutes of the 12 minutes, I was literally reading from the Washington Post article. I know there was one comment in there that said we spent 2 minutes on the racial side of things, but I literally spent about 8 minutes reading directly from the Washington Post article, which I also have up, which is linked in the Housing Wire article. Okay, I did spend 4 minutes putting my opinion on the appraisal industry, and we'll get into that for sure here on this show with Warren. But the comment section blew up as I predicted it would with appraisals, right? People absolutely appraisers.
Yes.
People absolutely disagreeing. And listen, no offense taken, by the way. People said we were an absolute joke, that we're very uneducated. That is true. I was a D student. You actually graduated from college.
I went to college.
You went to UConn. Good for you.
Yep.
So we get a lot of that. And I can read some of these. Greg Greenlee, for example, he commented a whole bunch, and he was very passionate. about how dumb we were.
There was lots of passion.
I didn't invite Greg on because he doesn't even know how to put a profile picture on YouTube. He's just got the little pink dot. If he had his picture on there, I might have. I don't know if he's a 16-year-old in his mother's basement. He did admittedly in one of the comments call himself a troll. So
I do hear. I did hear someone say that.
But the reason we've got Warren on here, Warren had a well thought out comment. I think it's got a lot of value to it. You had the most likes of any comment, Warren, in the thread. You had 16 likes. Nobody disliked it.
Did you get some new followers?
I even liked Warren's comment here. All right, let me read Warren's comment, and then we're going to get into the topic here and recapping this. All right. Mm-hmm. So Warren, you said you like watching our show normally, but it's painfully obvious you guys have a distorted and biased view of the appraisal industry. So Warren, as we said, is a realtor, and he says, I'm a realtor, but started as an appraiser back in 1998. I still actively appraise today. I've read all of these articles on racial discrimination in the appraisal process. They all have a common thread in that we get plenty of anecdotes of racial bias, but like I said, meaning me in the video, there are no facts to back it up, right? And this is true. It's not like the Washington Post said that appraiser lost his license. The appraisal came in the particular example in the Washington Post, $145,000 different from appraiser 1 when Lorenzo, who happens to be a black man, was at home, and appraisal 2 when Gwen, his wife, was home. It was $145,000 higher. They had two appraisals. Now, do we know that appraiser 1 was being, 100% racially discriminate? We don't know that, but that was a story in the Washington Post that we were covering. Okay, so then you go on to say, where in any of these articles is a simple desk review performed by an appraiser on any of these questionable reports to solidify some facts, to accurately determine without bias which appraisal is correct. It's almost like the facts don't seem to matter when an agenda is being pushed. I mean, it's not like the current administration announced these initiatives before election and the media might be helping them push the narrative here. No, it couldn't be. An appraiser is not the word of God, putting his opinion on a stone tablet without being questioned. There are already these AVMs run by every lender on appraisals. I definitely want to get to that. The AVMs that are run by the lenders on appraisals to check the comparable selection. We are second and triple guest on any appraisal we perform, particularly on purchases. And I can promise you in my 22-year career, so Warren here, who's going to speak in a minute, I promise I'm going to let him speak, has a lot of...
Byron likes to hear himself.
He's got a lot of experience. I've never stumbled and mumbled. That was a comment I made about appraisers that wasn't in the Washington Post article. Through a house in 10 minutes. I work hard to produce a credible and professional appraisal on every assignment I perform. It saddens me that the perception of appraisers is the one you guys have bought into. Wait till your prophecy is realized and the process is all automated. Then a seller, and this was really funny, then a seller will have no one to complain when they don't get a $5,000 value for the gold bidet installed in the hall bath. That was I thought that was brilliant. Warren. Okay, so Warren, here's where I want to start. And then you're going to have plenty of time here to pick our previous video apart, go any direction you want to go. I just want to make clear here, is an appraisal, and you mentioned that an appraiser is not the word of God, putting his opinion in a stone tablet. Is an appraisal an opinion of value? Is that a true or false?
It is true. It is opinion of value developed by using market data. So that's the appraiser just doesn't, or theoretically shouldn't, just pull this from his posterior. It should be developed based upon comparable closed sales. So Absolutely. Here's where
go ahead.
The rub gets into with a lot of real estate agents. They don't realize that we can only set a market value based upon a closed comparable transaction. We can't, pending sales and things that are under contract and multiple offers and all these things, they're nice, but they don't really, they're in the ether. They don't really mean a lot in a real estate appraisal. An underwriter is looking us to defend whatever value we put on. The one thing you're going to find out is that I'm full of BS and metaphors. So one metaphor I use all the time is not what being an appraiser is kind of like being a prosecuting attorney. It's not what I think all the time. It's what I can prove.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, though, if we're boiling it down to its simplest form, an appraisal is still just one person's opinion.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's where we get into some of these discrepancies, like the $145,000 difference in Denver that was referenced in the Washington Post article, where the first appraisal came in at $405,000 and the second one came in at what the couple believed was the top of the value according to the comps that they were looking at. Who knows where they were looking at? They didn't say if it was Zillow or Redfin or whatever, right?
Correct.
But at $550,000, and we can go through obviously numbers and numbers of these examples where there's a wide gap between appraisals. And, when I go through these comments, there's so many people ripping me about how sophisticated this process is and how I'm too uneducated to understand it. And it's, so much more deeper than you understand, Byron. And I get that. Listen, I was a D student. I always say real estate's a dumb man's game. Maybe it's a dumb man's game and a smart woman's business. I don't know. But I always say it's a dumb man's game, which is why a D student like I was.
We'll have to like a quote card on that.
Like I am was able to.
Byron quote card.
Yeah, real estate. It's a dumb man's game and a smart woman's business. There you go.
There we go.
I'll coin that one. But I agree. I'm not the brightest guy. There's no question about that. But if it's so sophisticated of a process, if it's so dialed in, why do we have these huge gaps from time to time in different appraisals? Do you think it's an appraiser's bias like the Washington Post believes? Or do you think one appraiser just missed something? Like, where do you see these gaps? Why do they happen from time to time?
Well, first of all, I got drool on my SAT, so I'm not a genius by any stretch of imagination. Here's the deal. Somebody's right and somebody's wrong. They both might be wrong, but they're both not right in this scenario. So we haven't seen an appraisal, like I said in my comments in the YouTube. We haven't seen a desk review done on these. Of all these racial bias, inequity cases that we're seeing, none have been
that we're seeing in the news. To be clear, that we're seeing like in Washington Post and these places. Okay.
There's about 4 major articles right now that are out in different metros. The interesting thing is that the articles all tend to follow the same format. Just some of the names and faces have changed a little bit. But none of those appraisals, to my knowledge, and I spoke with one of the guys you mentioned earlier, who's very well connected in the appraisal industry, and none of those have been turned into state boards. So if you've got a discrepancy with an appraiser, wouldn't you want a panel of professional appraisers to review it to see if it's correct or incorrect? Doesn't that make sense? They've been turned into the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So they're being reviewed by political appointees and career bureaucrats. Does that make any sense?
We're reviewed on boards.
I mean, here's where I'll go with that. If I'm a consumer, I don't want my case being reviewed by other appraisers personally. I mean, I don't even like it when, and this will take a whole nother turn, but this show, The Real Word, the reason we use the word racket when we talk about these segments is there is so much stuff in the real estate industry that is a complete racket. And you can start with how, to everybody's credit in the comments, to how uneducated how little education you need to get into the real estate industry. 60 hours, you got a license, you're out there helping people with their biggest asset. That's 100% true.
And that's always the number one thing on our confessionals, that every single person that we interview, they want to see more required education.
When we asked Tom Ferry or who else? Jill Biggs or some of these rock stars in the real estate industry, like, what if you had a magic wand, what would you change in the real estate industry? It's always the amount of education. Listen, there's 12 hours of continuing ed. The continuing ed classes that are put on by the boards,
we do take
there's
an appraisal class,
meat
though.
Behind them.
We are required to take an appraisal
weak.
Class.
Yeah, they're weak at best. It's a check the box to get the continuing ed type of courses. But the reason why we say rackets is because so much of this is designed in an antiquated way, in a racket type of format. Like, think about NAR. It's just designed to get more memberships when you really boil it all down, right? And so I don't want to completely go off the tracks here, but I don't want my appraisal issue to be reviewed by other appraisers that potentially are going to stick up for their buddy. Same way I don't want an ethics violation reviewed in the real estate industry by 5 real estate agents. Because if they don't like that real estate agent, they don't like their marketing practices, there is a whole bunch of bias that happens in these review panels. Speak on that, Warren.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to how it is in other places in the country, but the North Carolina Appraisal Board is comprised of both appraiser and non-appraiser members for that very reason.
Good.
The board, for its function here, as tough as their reputation is, and it's deserved, they do a really good job about unbiased reviews of these complainant reports. And my experiences, for the most part, with them have been very fair. And North Carolina is one of the tougher boards out there. As far as education goes, I remember when I started in 98, I had to basically do a 2-year kind of mentorship with my supervisory appraiser. And I went out with my supervisory appraiser is now my sister-in-law, by the way. But I went out with her on every appraisal report we did. Hundreds of properties, I got the benefit of that education and that experience when I was coming up. I think the same thing should be applied as a realtor to realtors. There's a lot of realtors who are really great at, branding themselves on TikTok and doing these things, but they don't know how to measure a house, and they don't know how to pick a comparable. And those things are glaring in their professionalism and amount of the ability just to do this job. I think those are far more important. We've gotten away from, I think there'd be less emphasis on being social media influencers. Ironic that I would say that in this format, but and then more upon the nuts and bolts about real estate.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually practitioners here, Warren. I want to make sure that's clear. 178 episodes in. We've never on this show, because we just want to cover the real estate industry. I did mention it in the comments, but just because somebody
did
totally came after us. Like I was like, listen, we did over $100 million in sales last year. We sold over 300 homes. We're going to do $200 million this year. We're going to sell over 500 homes. We never mentioned that ever. This is the first time we've ever mentioned that on this show. We're practitioners. We're in the business. We're doing this every single day. That being said, it's my belief, and I've said this in the comments for sure, that if you take both groups, appraisers and agents, out of the market's going to function. The market's the market. There's going to be a real estate market with or without any of us. I even said in the video, and nobody seemed to acknowledge it, that real estate agents, I've been saying it for, by the way, 178 episodes, but real estate agents are ripe for massive disruption. Oh, yeah. Like, that's what this whole show, like we talk about that all the time. There's tons of disruption coming for real estate agents. The one time I say it about appraisers, people go ballistic. I'm happy for it. We picked up a bunch of new subscribers for that, and I love the comments. Thank you. But it's just a fact of life as we sit here in 2021. Wall Street, big tech, consumers' ease in the transaction is going to continue to disrupt both of our industries.
Let me give you the other side, then be the devil's advocate for that. When I became state certified in 2000, I met with an appraiser shortly thereafter and told him I was so excited about how I had just gotten my certification. I sat for my test, ready to roll. I was no longer a trainee. I was ready to roll. And he said, I wouldn't be so excited because you're going to be out of business in 4 years. And that was in 2000.
Sure. Yeah. I think, go ahead.
I think one thing that we're forgetting is that, this world runs around the golden rule. And you know the golden rule, right?
That's right.
The man with the gold makes the rules.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the real estate golden rule.
Oh, location.
No.
Well, that too.
No, the one, do it to one as you want done to yourself type of deal there.
Part of what we're seeing here with these articles with the appraisals is that they've been trying to push these bifurcated reports. I think you mentioned them in your video, where one person does the inspection and then a guy sitting at a desk does the valuation to try to speed these up. And it's been a big move towards cheaper, faster appraisal reports. Problem with that is that their investor, the people with the money, haven't bought in so much, and the quality of these reports has not been very good. So thus far, they've been unable to produce those on a substantial level that's acceptable to the investor base, the people that have the money. Now, whether that will change when some of these big portal companies get into real estate and they start digitizing things remains to be seen. But we've all heard this before, so I feel like it's not going to come anytime soon, particularly because I think this current market may be delaying the inevitable.
Well, I think we really were mentioning more of that because that's what Biden's part of his initiative was.
Yeah, that wasn't our idea.
That was not our idea.
But
that was the initial article stating that Biden wanted to make some changes. Yeah. No, I just want to make sure that people that were maybe, that hadn't seen the last episode understood that we were just referencing what Biden's intent was with his appraisal.
And let me ask you this, Warren, I'll comment the same thing for agents, or I'll answer the same question in relation to real estate agents. If we look, and I agree, in 2000, especially after the dot-com bubble, people were predicting a lot of things that took a lot longer to happen, or still have yet to happen. To your point, 2000, that gentleman said, you'll be out of a business in 4 years. In 10 years from today, which is not a long period of time, but let's use a decade as our timestamp here. Will there be more or less appraisers? Will there be a need for more or less appraisers? And I would say less for real estate agents. There'll be less need for licensed real estate agents in 10 years. The great ones are going to survive. The ones that are adding value to consumers are going to survive. What about appraisers?
I'd agree that if things head the way they're supposed to, and that's a very key word, that there'll be less need for the real estate appraiser. That I think beyond common sense that some of this is going to get digitized and it's going to be, it's going to be moved. That timelines, they're going to try to force that as much as they can. But I'm not exactly ready to write the obituary of the real estate appraiser yet. You're
not letting your license expire anytime soon.
Well, I've got no future in exotic dancing, so I mean,
I think there's going to be, even when technology completely disrupts all these industries, there's going to be agents left that focus in on a niche part of the business, or that provide such an extreme value to their local community that they are the brand that people want to have a conversation with them to bounce everything else off of. Same thing with appraisers. There's going to be a need for appraisers, but the industry, in my opinion, these are just my opinions, and I know I got ripped for my opinions last time, the industry is going to be digitized. There's a Greg Schwartz who disrupted the real estate industry. He right now is building out. He raised over $70 million in 2 weeks. He's creating a mortgage company. And part of that mortgage company, their whole deal is they're going to guarantee the closing date, or they're going to buy the home for the buyer, let them move in, and then they'll close on it in a couple weeks. So Greg Schwartz, who is one of the first 4 or 5 people in at Zillow, who disrupted the real estate industry with Zillow, is starting this mortgage company. When he was explaining what they're doing with this mortgage company, he mentioned appraisals. And he said, we are going to change the way we're doing appraisals. We're going to make them faster, more predictable. He just used all these big buzzwords. But $75 million's just their first round of investments. And he's got the ability to raise tons of money like they did with Zillow. And same thing's happening in the real estate world, where people are raising a ton of money to disrupt our business. These are real dollars coming after both real estate agents and appraisers in a big way.
I would agree. I think, as being on the agent side of it, we're all seeing a downward pressure on commissions. I mean, that's not news. I mean, we're seeing the big change in the industry, and it's going to, people are going to have to adapt or they're not going to survive.
So Warren, go ahead if you want to finish that.
No, that's fine. No.
What do you want to say to us? You watched the video. I don't know how many of these comments you read. There was a whole bunch of them. It seems like you may know some of the people like Scap, and I don't know if you knew anybody else in the comment section. What do you want to? What do you want to say to us? Okay.
Well,
what do you want to say to us?
Being on both sides and playing, both sides of the fence here. I don't like the tenor on either side. It seems like appraisers and agents are trying to degrade.
It's almost like they're trying to show their value sometimes too. Yeah.
And we do that by, unfortunately, when we get into discussions like we're online, I didn't appreciate or agree with a lot of the other comments that were made. I stand by 100% what I wrote. But, you're degrading somebody's intelligence or things like that. I can tell you as an appraiser, I've been doing this a long time, and there are absolutely real estate agents that I go to when I have problems in my business. I bounce things. There's some very smart, very well versed in valuation real estate agents out there. So to degrade their intelligence and their expertise is wrong. At the same time, appraisers we're hardworking. We're not against a buyer. We're just not an advocate for a buyer. And that's the one thing that people have to remember is that we're not playing on the same team as the agent and the lender. We don't have a commission-based interest in that house closing. We're just trying to do what's required of us for, in our business and value that property correctly. When we see, I put on comments on, I guess probably what generated the most of the comments for you is I went to a Facebook group called 100% Real Estate Appraisers and posted your video, and I just said, we're losing the PR.
That's where they all found
Thank you,
us.
Warren. I appreciate that. Do that. Do that anytime.
We were like, where'd they all come from?
Post the follow up in there as well.
Oh, I will. I told them, I said, we're losing the PR battle here, and as appraisers, we've always done that.
Well, not on this one. You guys loaded up on the dislike button, so not on that last.
It wasn't me. I didn't.
No, I'm all good with it.
But it's tough out here for all of us. Nobody likes this real estate market. We're all tired. My personal opinion is real estate's not a lot of fun right now. Not with the current market, with low inventory like it is, and
agents are saying the same.
Yeah,
it's not, and I just want to see us all kind of work together and respect each other more.
Yeah. Well, I got a question that agents are on both sides of this. My take is, and I know it didn't come off in the last episode, but when I have an appraisal on a listing, I never, ever personally show up unless the appraiser requests me to show up. But I never show up because when I was doing it in the beginning of my career, I felt this awkward tension that the appraiser didn't want me there. And maybe it's just in my head, but I always had this feeling that the appraiser was just like, okay, run away. You don't need to be here. Don't be here. So I never go. At times, I don't even do it now, but my next step was I'll just get on the phone with the appraiser and kiss their butt. Like my whole thing when I talk to agents is just kiss their butt, just make it easy. Ask them when they want to see hey, when do you want to see the house? Great. Your time, your time, your schedule. Just go out of your way to make it easy on the appraiser increase your chances.
Well, and there's so many mixed signals though too with do you bring comps? Do you not, am I allowed to provide comps? Are you allowed to take the comps? Then some appraisers want the comps and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, you didn't send me. What's your opinion on that? You're on both sides. Should an agent show up and should an agent provide comps. I never,
because again, we don't want it to be
but,
insulting on them. Like we don't think that they're doing their job,
No,
but you
that's
also
my
want
point,
them to see what you were looking at to come up with the valuation too.
Sure. Well, you should absolutely send Nicole first. That's the, instead of sending yourself. Send
I agree.
I absolutely, when I go in to
Especially
look at any, when I look at any property, I always reach out to at least the listing agent on the transaction, in this market especially, because I want to review all the information while I'm putting the report together. That stops the reconsideration of value request down the road. I've got everything they're looking at before I develop my report. As an appraiser, I think there's no such thing as having too much information. Now, as far as, showing up, and it depends on how involved you are, appraisers tend to want, we want to focus on our measurements, making sure we've got things correct. And it can get distracting when we've got somebody looking over our shoulder. This is one conversation I have with homeowners on refinances all the time. It's like, sit down, I'll talk to you after I finish, I'll answer any questions you have, but let me do my thing. So I think you're right taking the light approach on comparables and things like that, but definitely send them what you're thinking. I mean, any good appraiser is going to review that and at least give it consideration.
Great. Any final thoughts, Warren, before we go to our next controversy, which is the EXP Dave Ramsey?
Yeah.
Oh, good luck with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna have a whole bunch of EXP. Well, maybe not. Maybe who knows what we'll have in the comments on that one. But before we move on to racket number 2, any final thoughts? Any last hot takes from you?
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity. I really have enjoyed being on with you guys, and I want to be a resource to you in the future if you need anything. I just like to see us all kind of tamper down the heat a little bit and see how we can work together to make it good for everybody.
I agree, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on, providing value. You are an absolute pro, so we really appreciate your time on the show.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Warren.